Joined now by our good friend Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, the IU beat writer for the Star. Zach, how are you doing, man?
Good. How about you?
Cannot complain. Of course, Dustin Shooty with me as always as well. An interesting week in the Big Ten. Indiana's women just continue to roll as they did again last night with their third straight win over a top 15 team, ninth win over a top 25 team, which is the most in the country. They're cruising towards a number one seed, and good for them. The men's team had a great opportunity this week and traveled to take on a tough Northwestern team, obviously second in the Big Ten right now. They were coming off of a win over Purdue, but Indiana needed that win to, if they were going to have a shot at getting any piece of the regular season Big Ten title, because there was hope that Purdue would go to Maryland, and with Maryland's tremendous play at home this year, that they would be able to knock off the Boilers, which they were. Unfortunately for the Hoosiers and their fans, they were not able to take advantage of that. But it is what it is, and I think that it just showed Indiana is, while very, very talented, they're still just this close to being that complete team. They've not matured to that level where they know they have to play at the highest level for two halves and not come out ready to play like they did at Northwestern, it seemed.
Yeah, I guess there's part of me that would probably question the initial premise of whether this can be the complete team, in the sense that I think there will always be flaws with this team. For example, they're always going to, I think, turn it over more often than they turn teams over. That's just part of their design. Games of extremes like that, in my experience, that it's never quite as good or as bad as it seems. That Northwestern probably didn't earn its way to a 21-point win. Indiana probably didn't earn its way to a 21-point comeback. And if it all kind of came out in the wash, and if we were talking about, let's say, a game that played out similarly to the Michigan game, but Indiana just couldn't finish it at the end, then we'd just say, well, that was a tough game on the road, and those happen sometimes. It doesn't hurt Indiana. Yes, at least to some extent, Indiana could have sort of made the Big Ten title race interesting again. I would point out they still would have had to beat Illinois at home and Michigan State on the road in what is going to be, I think, a very unusual environment on Tuesday night in the Breslin Center for a lot of really sad reasons. And then they'd have to go win at Purdue just to tie Purdue. But I think that Indiana, it's understandable if you look at Indiana and you say, or if they say they're disappointed with the way they started. I think they probably should have been at Northwestern. I think that they deserve credit for the way they solved their problems and the way they came back. And I also think that there's an extent to which this is maybe the time of year where, if you're Mike Woodson, you're allowed to look at them and just say, hey, guys, we don't get a lot more free passes in terms of, not starting well, finding our own energy on the road or at least away from home, et cetera, because, we talk all year about how you want to be playing your best basketball at the right time. Well, it's not quite the right time, but we're not far off of it. We're 11 days from March. Indiana doesn't have a lot of runway left to get better. And I think that's, that game as it goes can stand as a bit of a wake-up call in that regard.
Well, and I think,
Dustin.
Zach, where I would go and maybe ask this question would be, I understand that you can't have really those slow starts, and especially when you're going to be on the neutral. When you're going to be on a neutral court, you still have Purdue left to play. At the same time, I would say 8 out of the last 9 games, the thing that I'm optimistic about if I'm a fan is the fact that you've weathered those storms. You didn't beat Northwestern, but you weathered that storm and you were able to fight back. There's been at times during this stretch where they played really well. They might go 6 or 8 minutes and have a really bad slump, but they've been able to claw their way out of that. So to me, I feel like if there's an optimistic side, maybe they're not playing a full 40-minute basketball game quite yet, but at the same time, they've been able to endure those lulls where they haven't been playing well, and they fought back. They've won 7. They had a chance to beat Northwestern, so 8 times out of 9, and the only loss is coming against where you didn't have much of a shot is against a Maryland team that hasn't lost a Big Ten game at home, just annihilated Purdue last night. I still think that that's a positive to take away heading into the most important month of the season.
No, I think it's fair. I mean, I think it. I mean, again, listen. I mean, Indiana's. This can cut both ways. You can say Indiana's a couple of baskets away from losing at Minnesota. You can say that they're a couple baskets away from losing at Michigan. You can also say that, I know there are people that were making the argument that Boo Buie pushed off. I thought maybe there was a third step there. You don't see those calls made a lot in situations like that. The point is, if you're Indiana, I think you're still for the moment, and it's all contextualized by what comes next, but you're still for the moment allowed to say, if I'm speaking as Indiana, I'm saying we've played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in the last month, in the last really 3 weeks, that have been decided by 6 or fewer points. We've won 5 of those games, or 4 of those games. That's a good ratio, that you're finding a way to get it across the line. 3 of those are on the road, 2 of them are at home. I think it's just I didn't think that Indiana – I thought Indiana got more good than bad out of the Northwestern game. I thought it was a reinforcement of the idea that this team is a lot better at solving its problems than it was a year or two ago, and not just waiting for a coach to do it. But we heard, about how, at halftime, different guys were pointing things out to each other and sort of making those adjustments on their own. Obviously, if they could have made them a little earlier, maybe you can win the game. But I still just think that Northwestern, as it was, again, just felt like a bit of a game of extremes, but I think it was still good for Indiana in the way it unfolded. And Indiana didn't need to win that game. Indiana's in good NCAA tournament position. They finish if all they do is win out at home, they've at least still got a chance at a double bye. It's getting kind of crowded up there in the 3, 4, 5 spots in the Big Ten right now. We'll see how things unfold, but just broadly speaking, I think your assessment is fair, that there's more good than bad for Indiana right now. And even, listen, teams are going to lose games. It doesn't always mean that it's exposed some fatal flaw. It just means that, some nights, especially on the road, you just can't quite find it. And, guys can say stuff like, we weren't ready. I got to make sure we're ready. Well, I get that. But, if there were just some button to push, then teams would never lose on the road, and so there's that element of it too, that it's like, yes, you need to be better at that. You need to be more aware of that. It's good to have a reminder of that. But if there were just some sort of magic wand you could wave, then, teams would never lose. And so that's always just part of it too. The other team is trying as well.